which was, yes, I think as journalists, we wrestle with that dilemma with Trump from the beginning about, on the one hand, he's the president. We should be covering what he says. It's important. And then on the other, we know there will be some blatant lies and distortions. And of course, in his first term, the Washington Post kept count, and I think it was about 30,000 false and misleading statements that he made. And yeah, I think I agree with you that the pendulum has swung during that time. First couple of years, everything he said and tweeted was transcribed by sort of media stenographers in a way, including me, I admit. And then you become more and more skeptical, and particularly something like January the 6th and the build up to that 2020 election, it just would not be appropriate to write a simple news story saying Donald Trump says he won the election, and you've got to put in the caveats about the false claims. And now in the second term, I think a couple of things have happened. He's not really tweeting much on X anymore. He's on Truth Social, and that marginalizes him a bit. But yes, even in his public remarks, as you say, at NATO or to the press, they do get covered in some quarters. Certainly Fox News still takes a lot. MS Now, less so. Last night was a fascinating debate for the networks. Should they cover this primetime address? I think most of them made the right decision in not covering it. And MS Now showed some of it and then cut away with fact checks and so on. And yes, world leaders now have learned to be skeptical. And if you just look at the Iran war alone, remember somebody did a count. It was about 38 or 39 times he said it's going to end tomorrow, or we've got peace, or as a ceasefire.
And the strait is open.
Yeah, exactly. And then that was undercut by events. So everybody is learning that it's not really worth the paper it's written on.
So, I mean, while that speaks a lot to the man personally, it does damage to the United States around the world when our president, when people listen to our president and yawn, and and they go like, okay, that's just him being him. It doesn't matter. I mean, the credibility of our soft power, our hard power, all of it depends on whether we can be believed when we speak. And I think around the world now, that's lost. It'll take a long time to rebuild.
I think so. Yeah, some really lasting damage there. And of course, we've been through this once with the first Trump term, and then Joe Biden came in and was fond of talking about his conversations about trying to rebuild that trust, and being quizzed by foreign leaders. How do we know you're here to stay? How do we know Trump is not coming back? And then, of course, that is precisely what did happen. And second time around, Trump is arguably even worse and less trustworthy. And of course, it leaves international partners saying we just can't trust the US anymore. Even after Trump, who knows who's going to be there. And certainly I hear that European leaders and others are working on alternative future scenarios, which are far less dependent on the US, whether it's their own defense pacts or security agreements, or building entire structures that either exclude the US or certainly far less dependent. And we've heard those speeches from people like Mark Carney talking about a rupture in the rules-based order, and some of the things Emmanuel Macron has said.
Mark Carney doesn't really count as Europe. This is Canada, but
indeed,
yeah,
yes,
but he's saying, in effect, it doesn't matter that we have the longest border in the world with the United States. We can't trust what they're doing, and we need to look elsewhere. And I hear the same things you're hearing. Kind of heartbreaking, because I think it's not. I understand why the rest of the world's doing it. I don't think it's good for us in the United States. And long term, the partnership was good for everyone. But Europe has to, on energy, on defense, on economics. I mean, you have a sanctions-mad president that does not help global economics or build trust.
No, that's right. And I think we're probably underreporting and not entirely grasping how the Iran war alone is wreaking havoc around the world, and energy markets, and a lot of economies are suffering. Whatever is happening in the US with gas prices and the cost of fertilizer, I know there are many countries suffering far worse.
Far worse.
So they blame Trump for that. I suppose if I was going to play devil's advocate here, just to try and put the other side, why not? I would say, when I talk to British officials, for example, and others, they say beneath what's happening at that surface level with the leaders, actually, a lot of it is still business as usual in terms of intelligence sharing and security cooperation. And that tends to go on irrespective of whoever the president and prime minister are. There are some deep fundamentals there. And, if there's one lesson from the last decade, it's just how quickly things can change. So while I fear very lasting long-term damage has been done, I would not entirely rule out also the possibility of, the next US president trying to rebuild these partnerships and within a couple of years, people being surprised. Hey, look how quickly things got back to normal. I mean, I think there's some odds against that, but I'm also aware things can be much more sort of fluid and fast than we often think they are.
Well, David, I'm an optimist, and I think this era will come to an end, and I think Americans will not lose our democracy. But the threat is so real that, and the institutions in our country have failed, not the courts so much, but the law firms, the universities, big businesses. When you just the list of people who failed us in this moment, it's going to fall to the American people to save their democracy. And if we do, I think that's an inspiring lesson for everybody, because this was a big threat we will have avoided.
Yeah, one of the biggest ever, certainly many would say, since the Civil War. And I think that has been fascinating. In the first 6 months or year of the Trump presidency, he really knocked a lot of people back on their heels, and there was tremendous capitulation, as you say, of law firms, universities, some media organizations, and others. They're a real sort of shock and awe approach. But what's interesting is, I think more recently, you have seen some of these institutions pushing back more, discovering that courage is contagious, discovering that when you don't give in to the bully, he actually stops coming back for more. And I sense maybe a little bit of tide turning. And I think it's been great to see media organizations such as the New York Times and Wall Street Journal standing their ground on certain things, and others also defying Trump and making it clear he's not quite as powerful as he seemed. And yes, ultimately, all these things come down to the people, the citizens, and hopefully they will, ride out the storm. My gut feeling is that democracy will survive, but yes, it's a close run thing.
It is a close run thing.